Hello and welcome to this special edition of Bloomberg North. I'm Amber Mack.
And I'm Anthony Lacavera. Coming up on tonight's show, receive seed funding at breakneck speed. We hear from a group of investors accelerating startup funding.
Then we go to the moon and back with a maker of lunar rovers.
And we'll find out how virtual reality in the classroom is earning high marks.
But first, cloud-based data centers offer companies around the world an easy way to reduce their costs. There's just one problem. They often use outdated firewalls that hackers can easily breach. California-based Illumio says it has a solution. Give the bad guys fewer points of attack. Co-founder and CEO Andrew Rubin joins us now from San Francisco. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Andrew, recently the Wall Street Journal described your company as having an approach to cybersecurity that was similar to Star Wars. What exactly does that mean?
Illumio really discovers and contains cyber vulnerabilities very often after they've already entered an enterprise or organization's data center or cloud compute environment. And the way that we do that is we start off with an MRI-like functionality. The Illumio Adaptive Security Platform starts by really understanding all of an organization's compute as well as how it all talks to each other. And then from that picture, we're able to describe policy. And that policy is really about controlling how these things should and shouldn't talk to each other. What makes the adaptive security platform so special is the fact that the brain that controls all of this is dynamic. As the compute environment changes over time, those policies make sure that the bodyguard that we wrap around every compute instance is always doing its job exactly the right way.
So Andrew, what is the most unexpected vulnerability you typically find in a company?
I think very often what we find is that the blind spot about what that picture should look like. In other words, the baseline of what do I have today and how are all of these things talking to each other, that blind spot is substantially larger than most people expect. And if you don't see something, then you can't possibly know exactly how to protect it. So that MRI-like capability, that picture really is the start of the security story.
Andrew, we recently had the head of security for Microsoft on the show, and he talked about how social media is having an impact in the cybersecurity world. Has this had an impact as far as how you protect your clients?
Well, I think one of the common themes that we see in all breaches, the particulars, of course, are different from one to another, but one of the really common themes is that hackers start with a low-value target and then take advantage of something called dwell time. The ability to effectively live in your building without you knowing it for long periods of time, not days or weeks, but often months and sometimes even longer than a year. And the fact that we've created the ability to access a low-value target and then effectively hang around and look around for so long in order to find the high-value target, the thing that we clearly want to protect and the asset that's most valuable, I think that dynamic has become incredibly important to understand. And it's one of the things that Illumio works very hard to protect against, to reduce the surface area of attack and to use visibility to ensure that when something happens that's incorrect, we find it right away.
So Andrew, is the first customer for this, the attack surface assessment tool that you just recently released, is the first customer the enterprise, or is this also a small business target?
So the recent release of the ASAP program, or the attack surface assessment, is really about using our software to take that baseline picture and be able to study it, to analyze it, and to understand it. And those results are really used to reduce attack surface, or in the event of a breach, to substantially shrink the blast radius of the effective bomb that's going off inside of the data center or cloud compute environment. What we find is that obviously complexity, large enterprises that have global infrastructure, very often that blind spot can be enormous, and therefore the visibility and of course the analysis of the picture becomes incredibly important. But the truth is that every organization that relies on its technology and its infrastructure needs to be able to understand what these things are, how they're talking to each other, and effectively be able to eventually control it.
Thank you for joining us, Andrew. That was Andrew Rubin, co-founder and CEO of Illumio. The transition to solar is happening faster each year as alarm over climate change grows and more countries vow to lower their carbon footprint. The The International Energy Agency has said the sun could be the world's main power source by the year 2050. One company would like to see that day come much sooner and is using its innovative design to lure solar subscribers. This is what traditional solar panels look like, shiny black grids. That's what drove 2 MIT grads to make them more aesthetically pleasing so that homeowners don't have to sacrifice style for sustainability. Next year, their company, Sistine Solar, will start selling solar skins, panels that blend into your rooftop, so that no matter what color your shingles are, it will look all nice together. Tony, what do you think of this?
Well, so Amber, it's exciting to see designer solar panels hitting the market. But I mean, what is the cost of these versus existing solar panels?
That is a really good question. I got in touch with them today with a company, and they say it's comparable to other companies that are selling solar panels. And they also talked about the savings, the cost savings at the end of the day. You can save 20 to 50% as far as your electricity costs. So they really aren't that much more expensive than your typical solar panels, which I think is exciting for a lot of people who maybe were steering away from solar panels because they didn't like the way that they looked on their home or their hotels or businesses as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt that people have always shied away from it from the cost standpoint, the look, aesthetics, but also the government grants that are out there. So I'm just wondering if these guys will be able to qualify for the same kind of government programs that have incentivized so many consumers to adopt solar.
Well, that is a really good point because they actually got started because of a government grant. They got $1 million in funding from the federal government in the United States. And the interesting thing is they're seeing more and more demand. I guess there are many people or business owners who, like I said, didn't like the way that the solar panels looked. But let's take a home that is made of shingles, like we just saw. If you're able to have solar panels that kind of blend in, more people are open to installing them on their homes.
No doubt. So does this mean you're in for solar?
That is a great question. I am. I mean, I think this is exciting for a lot of people. We see that this is definitely the future. More people are going this direction as far as clean energy. And I think this is one company. It's a perfect example of students at a university who've come together to develop something that this has this amazing reach.
Look, I think it's great. And I come from the cell phone business, as you know, and there we try to make cell phone towers look like trees, palm trees, and they look fantastic when they're done properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, if you see what they've done, there's so much more room for them to grow. They're really in the early stages. And I would also argue that there's a lot of education that has to be done in terms of getting people out there, whether it's consumers or enterprise, to educating them about the benefits of this type of energy, because I think people at the end of the day don't really understand the cost savings. And so you put up this big upfront investment, and yet they don't understand. It's a long-term cost savings proposition, right? All right, coming up, an investment strategy that puts entrepreneurs in the hot seat for access to cold, hard cash.
And how a company's technology first developed for the moon is helping everyone from firefighters to farmers on the ground. Welcome back to Bloomberg North. According to the World Bank, angel investors funneled $20 billion into startups in 2015.
Maple Leaf Angels is one of those groups. They're the first angel partnership in Canada that commits to making investment decisions within 48 hours of hearing a pitch. Brandon Corman is the managing director of Maple Leaf Angels, and he joins us now in studio. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Brandon, I'm an angel investor myself, as you may know.
I do.
Invested in a lot of different deals, early stage deals. Does this cut the diligence process too short?
I don't think so. We had some criticisms over the years that angel investing takes too long. It could take several months and quite a grueling process for the entrepreneur to go through. So we wanted to challenge ourselves to try and make that a process more efficient and more straightforward. So we said, hey, why not do it in 48 hours? And in reality, we often know these entrepreneurs for much longer before we actually invite them to pitch to our investment committee.
How did you decide upon 48 hours? What is it about that time frame that makes it the right time frame to figure out just how much you need to know about that company?
To be honest with you, after they pitch to our investment committee, we often know the very same day whether or not we're going to make the investment. The 48 hours just gives us a little more time just in case there's something that we need to check out before giving that yes.
Well, so when you look across all the early stage deals you're seeing, what do you think is the outcome of the first 48 hours process? Do you think more deals got funded, less deals got funded?
I think that that more deals got funded because we're really trying to modify the way angel investing works in Canada, and by pooling the resources of the angels, we're able to pull the trigger a lot quicker and do a lot more deals in a shorter time frame. And again, this is very small amounts of money. We're only talking up to $60,000 in early stage tech companies. So It's really to get that option into that early stage company so that we can do a follow-on investment for more significant dollars.
Can you talk a little bit in terms of the characteristics that you're looking for in a company as far as the right company that is a good fit for this 48-hour investment?
Yeah, so at the really early stages of a company, the most important thing is often the founders. We look for a great team, an exceptional team, usually made up of one technical founder and one business founder. Often the idea changes, the product changes, the market changes, sometimes even the name of the company changes, but hopefully the founders will stay the same.
Well, really, as an investor, I mean, one of the upsides that I can see with this is the founder gets to focus right away on actually building the business. Instead of being distracted by a protracted fundraising process, you can get the money into the company much quicker, get the founder, get the CEO focused on actually building the business.
Right, getting back to business instead of spending all their time raising money and moving the business forward. Absolutely, for sure.
I mean, that is definitely something you like to see as an investor, but my concern, of course, would be that the exercise of actually raising capital typically involves the founder modifying, updating, improving their business plan significantly in order to actually make investors, make the asset more attractive to investors.
Absolutely. And with our $60,000 comes with a lot of mentorship and a whole lot of help from our angel investors to try and move that business forward.
Just quickly, do you see this as a trend that could have the potential to be popular around the world?
I think so. I mean, in the States, they move quite a lot quicker than us here in Canada in terms of early stage investment, as you may know. There's one particular company, 500 startups out of Silicon Valley that does the same kind of model, small check sizes fairly quickly. So I see it becoming more and more popular. Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Exploring the surface of the moon has captured the imaginations of people around the world. Bloomberg's Michael Bancroft discovered one startup that's rubbing shoulders with the top minds in aerospace in hopes of doing just that.
3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. Lift off.
The first places that spring to mind as hubs of the space industry might be Houston, Texas, or Los Angeles, California. One Canadian company is trying to put New Hamburg, Ontario on the map too. That's the home of Argo, a maker of rovers designed to grace the surface of the moon. The company has been building rover prototypes for NASA and the Canadian Space Agency since 2008.
When we were approached, it sounds so ridiculous at first, do you want to help work on a space rover? And the response is an unmitigated, hell yeah, we have to do that.
Argo churns out 2,000 vehicles every year from its manufacturing plant. One of its latest creations is the LRPDP lunar rover designed to carry scientific instruments.
Well, the one vehicle that we see behind me here, it's designed to drive around in the South Pole region of the moon. They will be outfitted with a drill and a package that will analyze the soil. And it'll figure out how much water is there, where's the water, what form is it in, to answer the question, how can we possibly go back there someday and harvest it? Every liter of water that we can make there saves us anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million.
The high-tech manufacturing happening at the Argo plant is exactly the sort of innovation that the Canadian government is trying to foster in hopes of diversifying the economy. But that sort of work has been slowly slipping away in Canada over the past several years.
Canadian manufacturing of space exploration equipment that includes rovers shrank to just $86 million in 2013, the smallest it's been in the last decade. Revenue from that subsector has fallen 25% since 2009.
We really need to commit to a flight mission. The Canadian Space Agency has been participating with NASA on a potential flight opportunity for the last number of years to the moon, and it sounds like it's picking up some steam again south of the border. We're very hopeful and we intend to be a part of that.
Just outside of the Argo facility is a test track meant to simulate some of the terrain found on the surface of the moon. The rovers are put through the ringer to find out if they can handle the demands of outer space.
Building a lunar rover for a space agency can score Argo as much as $400,000, but the real money comes from integrating the lunar rover technologies into commercial products like this one.
Well, the one vehicle we have is called a J5. It's being used right now in Martinique to spray bananas. There's a problem they're having called black mold, and the remedy is to spray a fungicide on the banana plants as they're growing up. So it's a good application for a robot. It's both dirty and it's dangerous. We have a version of the J5 called the Fire Dog, and it's outfitted with a water nozzle that's connected via a hose to a large truck and allows the firefighters to get in much closer to a potentially dangerous fire and be able to direct the nozzle straight onto the hot bits. It keeps them out of harm's way.
The Argo team expects its robotics division to double in size for each of the next few years, as demand for advanced commercial vehicles grows rapidly. If that happens, it ultimately means more high-paying manufacturing jobs will be added to the Canadian economy.
It's great to aim really high. We sometimes say you aim for the stars and you settle for the moon.
Okay with the moon?
Yeah, we'll settle for the moon. Yeah, it'll be okay. Maybe someday Mars.
Tony, you know, in that story, which was a great story, and I think Michael Bancroft had a ton of fun out there.
He sure did. The hat and the glasses looked great on him.
Yeah, he was very comfortable. But I'm curious, in terms of what you're seeing, why do you think that Canada's space industry is shrinking?
You know, I think that the reality is there's a huge capital investment necessary to make space projects work. And even though we're getting to small space, commercial space as it's known, where there's going to be a lot less dollars needed, there still is a very large investment upfront needed. And that the Canadian capital markets just aren't that deep for ventures that are this high risk. I mean, these are very high risk endeavors. But I do think we've got some great artificial intelligence research going on. We've got some great machine learning going on in Canada. A lot of great scientists that can really have a global impact in this area.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about this particular company is that, yes, they are trying to tackle and grow the space industry, but they also have other applications for the things that they're building. So they talked about whether it's spraying bananas or helping to fight fires, they're using the rover in different ways, which to me seems like a really smart approach.
Well, that just makes the economics work, right? I mean, there's so many different applications for this rover and so many different configurations, some of them we saw there in the video. I mean, I think that if you, the blue sky is the opportunity for what you could really configure this rover to do, which I think actually will introduce economics that make the space endeavor actually make a lot more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, fingers crossed, you know, they want to go to the moon, but just in case, they have other plans.
Lots of other stuff to do. Coming up, we'll hit the books with Aeon Reality, a company using virtual reality to make learning come alive for students around the world.
Welcome back. 2016 is expected to be the year virtual reality nets its first $1 billion. The majority of that is in the gaming and entertainment world, but one company is proving how the technology can dramatically change how we learn in the classroom, work in the field, and even play professional sports. Joining us now is Mats Johansson, CEO of Aeon Reality. Mats, how big is the virtual reality market when we're talking about using this as a virtual application for learning?
Yeah, the virtual reality market and augmented reality, which is a close cousin, is growing very, very rapidly. There are many studies out there that look at different aspects of learning, putting it somewhere between $20 billion to $150 billion a year. And we know from many of these studies that the corporate use, training use is going to be a very, very big portion of that. So it's hard to pin exactly how big it is, but it's a large and very rapidly growing market.
Mats, since there's this phenomenon of Pokemon Go taking over in the AR space, augmented reality versus virtual reality, do you think augmented reality has already eclipsed virtual reality or vice versa?
I think in gaming and being the most downloaded app on the app stores, that is definitely the direction. If we look at our space, augmented reality is still a relatively small portion, but the accelerated growth of AR versus VR is much steeper. And I think over the next 2 to 3 years, as we see companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and many other technology companies put out specific solutions for wearable AR, the market for training, knowledge transfer, which we are in, is going to grow very rapidly in the AR field as well. But today, I would say for us, probably 95% of the business is in VR as of today.
I've read articles about surgeons who are using virtual reality when it comes to training, and I'm curious what other use case scenarios there are as far as some of the clients that you're currently working with that are using this technology to train people.
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of use cases. We've been in this business for quite a while, so I'll take a a few different examples. So one, traditional in industry. We've done a lot of work in the energy sector over the years, and one of our clients, users, is ExxonMobil. They use this technology to train teams of operators, a little bit like having a flight simulator, but for a plant operator or team of operators. So that would be one use case. Another really fun use case we were involved in recently here in a growing field of aquatronics, training water engineers, working with a German company called Festo. We were awarded last year a grand award for an organization called WorldSkills for an aquatronics training application. And then you mentioned in the intro sports, so I can't help myself to mention sports as well, where we have a small startup subsidiary as of 2 years ago. And we've developed training applications for American football, as well as more lately baseball, where we have some power users, including a couple of pro teams in the national leagues.
Well, that's great, Mats. And so you've developed this AVR Knowledge Grant, as you're calling it. So just very quickly, we have only 20 seconds left. How does that grant impact the market?
It's a venue to bring into higher education, we think primarily, the type of technology used in Pokemon Go, but to help assist students, faculty, interfacing with the world in new and different ways. And we'd like to help build that and support it from Aeon's side.
Great, Mats. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us. That was Mats Johansson, CEO of Aeon Reality. Well, commercial travel to the moon is actually on the road to reality. Now that Moon Express has become the first private company to get U.S. approval for a lunar mission. Moon Express was formed in 2010 by a group of space entrepreneurs inspired by Google's Lunar X Prize, worth $20 million. And that prize will be rewarded to the first private organization to reach the moon. Now that Moon Express has U.S. government approval, the company says it will set a robotic lander on the moon in 2017. The goal is to ultimately mine the moon for natural resources of economic value. So Amber, who's going to control who gets what on the moon?
That is the big question. You know, I think about this and all of the different technology that people are building to go and to conquer the moon. And then I have to ask the question, who is the regulatory body as far as governing what happens on the moon? Who controls the moon?
I really feel like it's like the old days of deep sea exploration, where you land in a new continent, put your flag down, and now you own that land. I think that's the opportunity for these early explorers to go to the moon. I can't see any government on the Earth having jurisdiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, it is this real race that we're seeing right now. Not that long ago, I interviewed a father-son team who were in the race to build their own technology to go to the moon. And we're seeing this all over the place. It is truly this phenomenal race, and it's so costly to do so as well.
I love it because I think they're talking about there just being a wealth of natural resources on the moon. We could really see long-term a way to actually mitigate the environmental impact of all the mining we do here on Earth. If we could move it all to the moon and really take advantage of the resources that are apparently there, it could be amazing for the long-term sustainability of our ecosystem in the world.
Well, there has to be someone in control. I love what you're saying, but I'm fearful that we're going to have moon pirates in the future.
I think
it's going to happen.
We may
right?
be headed for moon pirateering.
It's a little frightening because at the end of the day, like you said, there are so many different opportunities, but it's really about this race, and there's no control over what happens really at the end of the day. All right, that's all the time we have for tonight's show.
Thanks a lot, and see you next time. Thanks for watching.